Hi there, folks. This is Dr. Ellenburg with my medical show here on Fox News Talk, 1020 AM at 95.5 FM. You also find us online at foxnewskoan.com. That's foxnewskoan.com. It's a show about medicine. You get questions about your health, questions about our topics in medicine. Give me a call here. It's a live show. Your calls are encouraged. It's 522-1020. It's 522-1020. So reminders how you find me during the week when I'm not here on Mondays at 2 to 3 p.m. And that is the Ellenburg Center for Natural Medicine. Our phone number there is 563-2366. Our website address is drellenburg.com. That's Dr. Ellenburg, Ellenburg with you. Ellenburg.com is our website. List of our services. List of websites about your health. Things in the environment that affect your health. Things in the environment anywhere you live and exists is your environment. Also suggested reading different books on our sites as well. And, of course, we do have archived radio shows against drellenburg.com. Check us out. And during the each month, I do see patients in Kenai and in Palmer. Call office for times and dates. So, again, our number there at the office is 563-2366. All right, folks. Well, let's get into our topics today. Got a whole different host of things to go over. We're going to talk about aspartame, which is a new, basically an alternative to sweetener for pops and various things, and how that's been linked to cancer. Talk today about gout and its actual possible link with lead levels in the body. That's a new one I've not heard of. I've talked before on the show about night shift work not being good for just about anybody, but now we have a demonstration from a recent study that came out talking about night shift work ups the risk of various cancers in men. I talked today about caffeine. You know, a lot of these kids these days, and a lot of adults, even adults, are drinking caffeinated drinks. Let's talk about some levels that are found in caffeine drinks. What are some of the side effects? And you might have them yourselves as well, even with coffee. And we'll go into those things as well. An article that appeared talking about vitamin D entitled Time to Ditch Vitamin D with a question mark. We'll go into why that's a bad idea. I want to talk today, too, about cholesterol levels and how they are a concern, but in the guise of what type of cholesterol you actually have, and as cholesterol not being the real enemy. Exercise and decreasing your risk of getting dementia, and also talking today about several good methods and things to be doing to enhance your gastrointestinal tract and keep it in good health. All right, so again, this is Dr. Michael Ellenburg. If you have questions about your health or about our topics here on medicine, give me a call. It's 522-1020. That's 522-1020. And here we go. So aspartame has been involved in as a nutritional sweetener and alternative to sugar as far as sweetener in many products for some time. And there have been reports over the years of aspartame being linked to causing headaches in a variety of people, all kinds of other issues in general. And one area where we haven't heard a whole lot about was with cancer, has been marked with that. Now we have a study that appeared here. Where did it appear? Let's get the correct place for that. Did I have that listed here? Usually I list it for you guys. Well, I'm not saying it. That's not good. Okay, well, anyways, this study just came out, and it was part of the so there were two huge studies here done over a long period of time. One was the nurses' health study and the health professionals' follow-up study. And they're over almost a 20-year period of time, particularly the health professionals' follow-up study, where basically they have health professionals fill out information about their health once a year. And the nurse health study totaled around 77,000 women, and the health professionals follow-up study, I guess combination of two, So nurses health study would have been men or women both, obviously. But for a total of 77,000 women in both studies and 47,000 men in both studies. And in here, instead of once a year, every 2 years, people in the study did a detailed questionnaire about their diet and what they drank as far as soda pops. And then they looked at a variety of information along the way. And what we found out in this particular study is that one diet soda daily may increase your risk for leukemia in men and women, and in men specifically, it may increase your risk of what's called multiple myeloma, another type of cancer called non-Hodgkin lymphoma. So basically the bottom line is we see certain types of cancers in this particular study showed up as being increased in men, and men and women both, it was leukemia, which is basically a cancer of your bone marrow, similar to multiple myeloma in some ways. Not exactly the same, but both cancers of the bone marrow. And what it showed in looking at the different analyses that were done is that just one 12-ounce can of diet soda daily led to a 42% increased risk of leukemia in both men and women, a 102% increase in multiple myeloma in men only, and a 31% increase in non-Hodgkin lymphoma risk in men as well, and not women. And we're not quite sure why this is. We have seen some similar data that has demonstrated that aspartame can increase the risk for lymphomas and leukemia in rat studies back from several years ago. But this is a quite larger study over a longer period of time, and that's kind of what's the interesting piece. And so, to directly link this with cancer, that's the hard part. But they try and take these variables out and looking at someone's timeline. What was present in either groups of men and women during these time periods, and what were they doing consistently? And one of those things was drinking diet soda. Some of them, obviously not all of them, are doing this. So it's a reminder that when you're trying to think, well, if I'm going to have a healthy alternative, I'm going to have a diet soda. Well, that's really a bad choice. And furthermore, if you're thinking about, well, if I'm not going to have a diet soda but a regular soda pop, there has been a study in the past demonstrating that one or more sugar-sweetened sodas daily saw a almost 70% increase in non-Hodgkin lymphoma in men. So as they comment here, as part of the article came from naturalnews.com, that perhaps the healthiest soda is no soda at all, and I could certainly agree with that. It should be used as a treat and hardly ever consumed. If you're going to have the real thing, you might as well have the real thing and not having diet soda. I don't promote drinking soda anyways, but I'm saying if you're going to have a treat once in a while and have a soda pop, don't drink diet, okay? And I've even seen patients who drink like 3 or 4 diet sodas in the morning, actually in the day at work. And when they stop doing that, they get terrible headaches. It's almost an addiction to that particular type of product, even though there's no low caffeine in some of these things, so there's lots of caffeine and no sugar. What else soda pop do to your body? Well, soda pop, diet or regular soda pop, is very acidic. That means when you drink it, it has quite a lower pH, like around 5 or around 6 as far as the pH, and that makes your body more acidic and can increase inflammation in your system. Also, drinking lots of soda pop will also increase your leaching your body of calcium and magnesium. So lots of great reasons not to consume soda pop, and here we go again, some really big ones: how to avoid getting cancer. Put on the list of things to do, what to do is to avoid drinking diet and regular soda pop on a regular basis. All right, folks, let's remind you again, it's Dr. Michael Ellenburg. Our phone number here at the station is 522-1020. That's 522-1020. Questions, comments about your health, about topics of medicine, give me a call if you like. You are encouraged as a live call-in show. Again, some reminders, too, you'll find us on 1020 AM, also 95.5 FM simulcast, and we're online at foxnewskoan.com. Well, the last few weeks we made a couple of comments here on the show talking about lead levels, and specifically over the last 2 weeks was discussing the lead level reduction in blood levels for children by the Center for Disease Control, also known as the CDC, and how lead can affect your bone marrow. Lead is stored mostly in your bones and go to your brain and cause neurological problems, and we have seen lead levels, even at lower levels, even in children, causing ADHD-type symptoms. Biggest question we always get is, well, how would I be exposed to lead when supposedly it's out of the environment? Well, it's not out of the environment. If you live in a home that's 1978 or back, you're going to have lead in your house, even if it's been painted over. It's still in the house, still in the dust, and you can get it into your bodies, and so can kids playing around on the floor and on the carpet, right? And beyond that, we do have lead that can be present in pipes and houses, copper pipes. Soldering that put pipes together can, through a process of electrolysis over a number of years, can drag lead from that solder into the pipes, and you can consume it in your water. So it's important to understand those things about our exposures to lead and why it's a problem. Now we have a new article that appeared in the Annals of Internal Medicine in August, looking at people having low-level lead exposures and how common is gout in those particular groups. And what they wanted to find out in the study is whether blood lead levels within a range that we currently consider to be safe are associated with an occurrence of someone getting gout. And one of the biggest problems we have when looking at lead, and it's a good reminder again to discuss this, is that lead does not just sit in your blood, right? It goes into your bones, goes into your brain. Some areas it goes to. It goes to your kidneys, as a matter of fact, as well. And it does not just sit in the blood. So just having a blood lead level test done and it comes back saying nothing or nothing detected in your blood doesn't mean you don't have lead in you. Okay, so it's important to understand that. If you have lead in your blood of any level, that means you have an exposure somewhere in your life, either in the home you live in, your food, or your water. If you're old enough and are starting to develop some bone loss, you can't have a leaching of lead from your own bones and basically poison yourself as you get older with bone loss and lead moving from the bones and back into your blood supply. It can be a very vicious cycle, actually, when it comes to those sort of things. And levels are interesting. So by OSHA standards, if you work in an area that's, for example, high in lead, if it's under 40, or this case, 40 for occupational, 25 for this among adults, that's considered safe and acceptable. Yet you can see problems with people's neurological functioning even above 10, including children. And so we're even saying right now that we should really be lowering levels of lead as it is. And in this particular study, it looked at 6,153 civilians aged 40 years and older who had good kidney function. And these numbers came from the NHANES studies that were taken during 2005 and 2008. And NHANES is a National Health and Nutrition Examination surveys that are done every 3 years. And what they do is they'll sample certain areas of the U.S., various areas, not just one area that has been polluted, but lots of places to get an idea of what are some common contaminants in our bodies and what kind of levels are we finding those in people, for kids, for females, for males, and at certain ages in those groups as well. And the prevalence, that means the occurrence of gout in this group, this cohort that was picked, was about 6%. And among patients who had a higher level of blood lead levels, which is around 4, compared with those who had one of the lowest quartiles, they put it here, which are under 1. And so there was definitely, for each doubling of blood lead levels, there was an associated or increased risk for developing gout and for hyperuricemia. So gout is a condition where you have a high amount of uric acid in your blood that can also then therefore end up collecting in certain joints, usually big joints like the wrist or knees or ankles. A lot of times the big toe is a big area where it happens to collect, and they create little crystals called tophi, and that causes pain and irritation inside joints. It can also cause kidney stones as well. So that's another reason to worry about having problems with gout. But it's interesting from this study that it looks like we could have a kind of a cofactor, especially in patients who get gout a lot. And, we'll put them on special diets, get them off high-protein diets, get them off alcohol, and yet their uric acid levels can still seem to stay kind of high sometimes. And I'll tell you from now on, what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start checking folks. If we get a gout patient come in, we're going to draw a blood lead level on them and see where they're at. That's just another reason to be checking those levels more often in patients and see what they come out at. And we're talking about ranges of lead levels in patients that are supposed to be considered normal and safe, and yet we're seeing increased risk in this particular study here of increased uric acid and gout in this particular population group, men and female both, not just men. So what are some ways of treating gout besides taking allopurinol or Uloric, 2 main medications these days used to treat gout that are prescriptions that are prescribed? Well, the biggest thing is going to be a dietary approach if you get it more chronically, and that is, of course, avoiding high protein because it increases your production in your body of uric acid. You can also work at trying to get your body more alkaline. And it seems that if the urine is more alkaline, people tend to have less gout attacks. And you can measure your pH of your urine with pH test strips. They're very inexpensive. And you can do some measurements, first thing in the morning when you urinate is check your pH. And alkaline would be somewhere above 7 and above. And usually you won't see much more than about 8, if you're lucky, even 9. Where acidic urine can go down as far as even 4 or 5. So if you're running more acidic, either as a dietary, things I'm consuming in my body, am I drinking caffeine, that can make you, especially from coffee, can make you more acidic. Alcohol can make you more acidic. So remove those things. If it's an acute experience taking place, you may need to get on a prescription allopurinol because it works quite well. It seems quickly. You could also try and work at taking some baking soda. a certain amount, like a half teaspoon. It varies, of course. Taking a half teaspoon a couple times a day, possibly. Again, you want to be sure about where your alkaline level is at. So if you have gout, start checking your urine. You can base it off of that. Apple cider vinegar, even though it's acidic, creates an alkaline environment in the body and the urine. So things worth considering. It can work in that direction. Vitamin C can also help because vitamin C inhibits something called xanthine oxidase in your body, which increases the production of uric acid. So vitamin C can be used, and that's probably why cherry bark extract works well in a lot of patients because it's high in vitamin C. And again, works well in those who have gout, we're talking about right here. But if you get chronic gout, you might want to consider talking to your provider and having your blood lead levels checked out. I'd highly recommend it. So look into that. And again, I mentioned last week too, is as far as if you have no lead in your blood, you might still have lead in your body. You can actually do certain types of provoking tests using a chelating agent that can bind lead extremely well, and then do a urine collection for several hours afterwards, and that's binding that particular chelating agent can bind lead in your body, and you can you filter it out through your bloodstream, through your kidneys, and you pee it out basically, and then can measure the lead levels in that sample from the provoked part of your body, from provoking your body to dump heavy metals. Usually what we're doing there is we're having a random sample done with no chelating agent on board, and then the patient takes an agent, and then we compare it to see what the levels are at. And it's important to have a pre-test and a post-test with that to make sure the patient does not have any current exposures, because you could have a random sample that's being done and it could be high. That means you have a current exposure somewhere in your life. You're being exposed to lead, for example. All right. Hope you found it interesting, because I found it very interesting as well. So again, with gout, look into lead if you have it chronically and have your levels checked in your blood at least as a minimum thing to be doing. And of course, recap too, avoiding aspartame and diet soda increase your risk of getting cancer of various types, multiple myeloma, non-Hodgkin lymphoma, and leukemia. We got about 6 minutes or so before the bottom of the hour break. Enough time to get started on our third topic here today. Again, if you have questions or comments about your health or questions about medicine in general, give us a call here. It's 522-1020. It's 522-1020. Well, over the last few years, I have talked about the studies that have demonstrated that women who work in the morning hours, basically night shift work, increases the risk of breast cancer. In fact, there's been at least 2 or 3 articles on this, journal articles on this over the last probably 2 years. Well, a new one just came out that was published in the November issue of the American Journal of Epidemiology, what epidemiology means is a study of disease in populations. And this looked at men who worked at night. And basically, the study compared 3,137 men with cancer matched to controls, and looked at information from old information, but still good questionnaires about occupational work and lifestyle from 1979 to 1985. And what's interesting about this study is that compared to men who never worked at night, men who worked night shifts had an increased risk for prostate cancer, pancreatic cancer, rectal cancer, colon cancer, bladder cancer, lung cancer, and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. A lot of different types of cancers. That was quite surprising in these findings. And we start asking the question, well, why would this even be something that we would even see in a population of workers working at night? Well, there's one hypothesis, and that's basically a hypothesis is a suggestion as here's an answer, here's a theory basically. And one was this light at night hypothesis, meaning if your circadian rhythm is linked to having a certain time period of darkness, and that darkness period is not happening when you're supposed to be sleeping, you can lead to possibly hormone disruption. Because hormones are secreted at a very certain type of rhythm called a circadian rhythm at a certain period of time. And we don't know how all the effects of working in the middle of the night does to our bodies. We do know that it would definitely affect the production of a hormone called melatonin. And melatonin is secreted from a gland in your brain called the pineal gland. And what's interesting about melatonin is that puberty is actually somewhat timed around melatonin, that you'll have releases of melatonin at a certain age that stimulates puberty to happen. So we know that there's some type of a connection with melatonin and sex hormones. in the body. And we do know that with certain cancers like prostate cancer and with breast cancer, they can have a hormonal component. In fact, we could argue that maybe all cancers to some extent have a hormonal component. We just haven't figured it out yet. And like I said before, there were several different types of cancers in the study: colon cancer, rectal cancer, bladder cancer, pancreatic cancer, lung cancer, prostate cancer. I mean, a lot of different types of cancers were increased in these men who worked at night. And now we don't have the whole study in front of me here to say, well, maybe they worked in a factory where they exposed things, but they would look for those things to kind of weed out and not confound the information gleaned from the study. And there has been demonstrations that circadian disruption, in this case your circadian rhythm, can disrupt again melatonin, right, and has a direct effect on tumor growth. And even demonstrating that circadian disruption at night may even affect, the big word here, epigenetics. And what are those? Well, that's what we found out from the genome study, the big giant project we spent all kinds of money on, saying, well, we're going to lay out all the genes in the human, and we'll be able to figure out how to treat them based on what genes are deleted in this little sequence over here. Well, it turns out that we go further down the rabbit hole and find out, well, there's a whole process above the genes called the epigenome or epigenetics, and that's what controls the genes. And now we're finding out that even circadian rhythm might have an effect on our epigenetics. Problems, right? Cancer is a complicated disease process. It's not going to be one thing. That's why I really get upset at times. I'm too upset, but I just shake my head when I hear we're going to find the cure for cancer. There is not a one cure for cancer. It does not exist. There are many things involved in the cancer's process. We should be going after the cancer with, we're trying to find as many things out there that make cancer happen. That's how we should be approaching that. That makes more sense, and eliminating those things, and then maybe you would have a cure for cancer if you remove all these things that have caused disease or can cause disease that might lead to cancer. So cancer is so complicated. That's why we haven't gotten very far in getting phenomenal success with our current cancer treatments. So it's a big concern. And one note that I want to put on here is that we do have a group called the International Agency for Research on Cancers, known as IARC. And even as far back as 2009, they classified night shift work as being possibly carcinogenic. And in a Danish court, that means people from Holland, in a Danish court awarded compensation to women with breast cancer who had worked night shifts for long periods of time. That means even the judge and people involved in the case see credibility that night shift work can increase your risk of developing cancer. Now, some of you out there work night shifts and you have no choice, but the reality is you want to keep a strong immune system and hopefully not work night shifts for the rest of your life. In fact, I don't recommend anybody be doing that at all. I've tried it. I felt horrible, so I don't do it, nor would I ever do it. So remember that. There's a mind to get good sleep right there, too. So, all right, folks, a sign of our breaks here on the way. Tune back in here in a few minutes. And we'll give questions or calls, 522-1020. Back in a few minutes. Bye.
Make him the cutest that I've ever seen. Bum, 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 bum. Give him two lips like roses and clover. Bum, bum, bum. Then tell him that his lonesome nights are over. Sandman, I'm so alone. Bum, 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 bum. Don't have nobody to call my own. Bum, 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 bum. Please turn on.
Hi there, folks. This is Dr. Ellenburg, one Micro Medical Show here on Fox News Talk 1020 AM, 95.5 FM as well, and you'll find us online at foxnewskoan.com. That's foxnewskoan.com. You have questions about your health, questions about medicine, questions about our topics on our show today. Give us a call if you'd like. Again, that's 522-1020. All right, we had a call during the break asking, well, if you do work night shift work, what can you do for yourself? Well, one thing, and I'm glad I had 5 minutes to think about that, because I was like, one thing I would recommend in those people who are working night shift work is that you should probably take melatonin once you go to sleep in that part of the day. So if you get home at like 7 o'clock in the morning and you crawl into bed at 10 and you're sleeping until 4 or what you're doing, I'd probably recommend taking melatonin, because what's happening is you're going to have very little melatonin secretion most of the time, because unless when it's dark out, and again, you could say, well, it's dark in my room in the daytime. Won't I get melatonin secretion then? You'll probably get some, but the circadian rhythm, what your body should really be doing, is secreting that at night when you're actually working and being exposed to light. And I don't know, I was just thinking of this question too, is the study is looking at, well, if you're drawing blood on people who are sleeping in dark rooms, in the middle of the day, what are the levels compared to at night? But I still think we find they may have much lower levels of melatonin than levels measured in the middle of the night when it is dark out or is dark in a darkened area and people are sleeping. So melatonin would be a great idea to be taking for that reason. Beyond that, I don't have a lot more to suggest. I think the other part I've had some patients do, which made sense to me, is some type of adrenal support, because, again, you're changing your cortisol output. That's also on a circadian rhythm to where it's going to be releasing more hormone in the daytime than at night, especially with cortisol. And that makes some sense too. So some adrenal support and probably some melatonin would be a great thing to be doing long term to see what that could do for you. Other than that, I don't have a whole lot of recommendations other than eat healthy, exercise, and drink plenty of water. Important things. Later on here we'll talk more about exercise and how that actually increases your risk of developing dementia. I hope that answers your question, the caller. Thanks for calling in about that. And again, questions and comments about your health, 522-1020. It's 522-1020. Well, I came across an article on a email list I belong to called Natural Standard. It's a huge online database of herbs and vitamins, and it usually requires a subscription to the actual database, but they do send out reports, free reports at times from their email alerts that are free. And they were commenting on a FDA investigation that was looking at the claims that several deaths have been caused by the drink called Monster Energy, an energy drink manufactured by the Monster Beverage Corporation. And last year, one of the claims took place. Last year, a teenage girl died after drinking two 24-ounce cans of Monster Energy over one day. So 2 cans of that in one day. And the autopsy reports demonstrated that her death was due to heart complications from caffeine toxicity. However, just to be all fairness here, she did have a heart condition that was a genetic defect in her heart, making it unclear if her death resulted from the energy drinks or the fact that she had a defect with her heart. They don't go into what defect that actually was. So I got interested in this. Well, let's look a little further. So the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends that teenagers should consume 100 milligrams or less daily of caffeine. I would say no caffeine, but they're saying no more than 100 milligrams a day. Well, how much caffeine is found in a 24-ounce can of Monster Energy? It contains about 240 milligrams of caffeine, or about 7 times the caffeine level in a 12-ounce can of soda. So definitely kids should not be drinking these things at all, much less adults in the first place either. I mean, it's a huge whack of caffeine you're getting hit with. And, our average caffeine content for soda pop is somewhere between 25 and about 35 milligrams of caffeine. And if someone had a Monster Energy that's 240 milligrams of caffeine, this young woman and this teenage girl had 2 of those. So she had 480 milligrams of caffeine. She had more than 4.5 times more than caffeine that teenagers should get in one day. That might do you in. I did an article comment about 4 or 5 years ago talking about Red Bull, and that they said if anybody drank 2 Red Bulls at one sitting, it puts your body in a state that would increase your risk of getting a stroke. That means having a blood vessel burst in your head or clot up in your brain and cause a stroke. So let's discuss it a little bit further. Well, we know caffeine is used in medicine. And how has it been used in medicine? Well, it's been used as a stimulant in medicine for some, and it's a stimulant for many. I mean, look at the coffee shops in Alaska. I mean, I get people who come up here visit me from the lower 48, and they're like, man, do you guys love coffee or what? Because they have all these coffee shacks all over the place, right? There's loads of places that got them around. As long as you can drive a car somewhere, there's probably a special shop somewhere. And let's talk about coffee for a minute as far as the type, as far as the amount in coffee. So there's ranges. Obviously, you get stronger types of coffee. A French roast is going to be a really strong coffee, and you got what's a real light one? Like a Folgers would probably be like a very light type of caffeine amount. But the serving size for an 8-ounce cup of coffee of caffeine ranges anywhere from about 102 to 200 milligrams of caffeine. They have down different companies mentioned here. I'm not endorsing anybody, but I will mention some names. So Starbucks brewed coffee, a grande, is 320 milligrams of caffeine. Dunkin' Donuts, 16 ounce, is 206 milligrams of caffeine. What else we got here? Starbucks Espresso a solo, a shot, is 75 milligrams of caffeine. So it's a fair amount of caffeine in both of those. And that's like drinking 2 soda pops at once for just a shot. If you had that grande, you're getting enough caffeine in that compares to about a little more than 8 or 9 soda pops in one drink. One drink. Okay? Not good, folks. Not good at all. What else? Some other drinks here that are high in caffeine that are energy drinks are considered, wake you up kind of stuff. Well, let's see. Sobe, they make one called No Fear. That's 83 milligrams. 5 Hour Energy. See, that one you see on TV all the time, right? If you watch television, that is. 5 Hour Energy. It's 207 milligrams of caffeine. That's why it perks you up in the afternoon. It doesn't perk you up because it's got B vitamins in it or has ginseng in it. It perks you up because it's got caffeine in it. That's why it perks you up. And I always like in consuming coffee or things that are high in caffeine is someone taking your adrenal glands and squeezing them to get the energy drops out of your adrenals itself directly. And that's why people who drink a lot of coffee long term really are hammering hard on your adrenals. And your adrenals provide a lot of energy for your body. And when you don't have the energy and you're drinking coffee to make that happen, they're still being affected. Okay? So do I drink coffee? I get asked quite a bit. I drink coffee about 3 times a week. Usually twice on the weekend, a cup, and 1 during the week. That is it. Because I know I don't need it. I just like the way it tastes. And that's without cream and sugar, by the way. That's black coffee. What are some side effects? What are some symptoms you might experience by drinking and consuming beverages that are high in caffeine? Well, it could increase your blood pressure. And in many patients, we have them stop drinking coffee and their blood pressure improves. Caffeine can cause anxiety, can cause insomnia. It's also a diuretic, so it can cause frequent urination. It can make you feel dizzy. You can increase itching in your body and even cause gastritis, or basically stomach upset or GI upset. Also makes you very acidic, which can increase inflammation in your body. This is the caffeine directly in this case. It's found in coffee. Yes, you could do decaffeinated, and yes, the amount of caffeine in that's very small. It's like 5 milligrams of caffeine, but that's not the point. The point is, a lot of people are consuming way too much caffeine, and particularly you should not let your children drink or your teenagers drink energy drinks. Maybe once in a great while it's a treat, like I don't know how that would be, like once every couple of months. I don't know about that, but even then, maybe consider not to be doing that. But telling your children not to be consuming these kind of drinks because it could increase the risk of dying. Not good. Okay, but a very interesting article on caffeine came from a Natural Standard Safety Update. So check it out on that site if you're curious to learn more about that. All right, folks, this is Dr. Michael Ellenburg, the Michael Show here on Fox News Talk, 1020 a.m., also found 95.5 FM. We're also online at foxnewskoan.com. That's foxnewskoan.com. Questions, comments about your health, about medicine. Our phone number here, if you like, to give us a call and talk with us, is 522-1020. It's 522-1020. Well, looking at another group I use for information for our show here is a group called Web Doctor. And they put out a weekly newsletter that's pretty small with a variety of medical topics. And this one caught my eye big time. And it's in a question marked one saying, "Time to ditch vitamin D?" ? And in this particular article they discuss here on Web Doctor, they're talking about recent recommendations from the Institute of Medicine that has issued new guidelines concerning the reducing one of the required levels for vitamin D, and also therefore it would reduce recommendations for people to take vitamin D. And what this organization has concluded, the Institute of Medicine, is that patients who have vitamin D levels at 20 nanograms per milliliter or nanograms per mil or above do not need to take a supplement of vitamin D. Well, when I first started measuring vitamin D, probably about 7 or 8 years ago, they started at 10 as far as the bottom part of the range, then it went to 20, then it went to 30, where we're currently at. And the upper end of the range went from like 60 to 80 to 100. So now the range is about 30 to 100. I do not agree with this new recommendation from the Institute of Medicine. I have seen many a patient who have had levels even in the mid-20s or even the low 30s that have gotten those levels increased through supplementation with vitamin D and had them have improvements in anxiety or depression, improvements in their fatigue levels. I've seen skin problems improve and get better and go away. So there's definitely more to it than meets the eye, and suggesting that people, who are at least at 20, for example, don't take any vitamin D is a problem. It's not good advice. It's going to lead to more problems than good. And as I mentioned before, vitamin D is really a hormone in the body. It's not really a vitamin. And so it has a wide variety of actions in the body. And I do not agree with just to take that at not at all if your levels are above 20. I would say take some more to maintain it, and furthermore get to a healthy, optimal level. What is optimal? That's the question, right? This idea of taking 400 international units a day of vitamin D so you don't get rickets, right? The disease associated with a deficiency of vitamin D. And again, as I will say, this as always, I always do about this topic about vitamin D, have your blood vitamin D levels checked. And that's the best way to begin with. Even though the Institute for Medicine is suggesting this be change, a lot of groups, which include the Endocrine Society, will be employing the old guidelines, and they should. I think if anything, we could even increase the range from say up to 40, and say starting at 40 would be a better place for people to be at overall, and somewhere between 40 and say 80 as far as the range that we're looking for as far as vitamin D levels are concerned. So the biggest thing is find out where you're at, and then see someone who can properly tell you how to take vitamin D. Okay, it's hard to get toxic on vitamin D, but it can happen. You got to work pretty hard at it, but it can definitely happen. So be aware of that. And we're talking about people taking doses like 20,000 units a day every day for a long time. Might increase your risk for sure of having toxicity problems down the road, where someone taking say 5,000 units a day may not have a problem. But again, have your levels checked and see where you're starting from. That's the way to do it. It's a blood test, 25-hydroxy vitamin D. Okay, we'll move on from there. We've heard about vitamin D almost every week, but that's one I couldn't pass up talking about. Another article from a web doctor here entitled Finding the Root Cause of High Cholesterol. And they talk in this particular article about the fact that you have LDL accumulating in the arteries in the body, and that it can accelerate if they found a new type of protein in the body called resistin that is secreted by fat tissue, and it says causes high levels of bad cholesterol. Well, first of all, there actually are good levels of LDL cholesterol. Not all LDL cholesterol is bad. And the way the LDL cholesterol would even get into your arteries, as we currently understand it with our theory of atherogenesis or atherosclerosis, means the hardening of the arteries, is the following: is that something damages the inside of the artery that's exposed to the blood, and then LDLs, if they're a certain size, can get into the lining of the arterial wall. And when that happens, the immune system gets involved with macrophages that can create what's called foam cells that later turn into hard calcified plaques. And that's basically the process as we currently understand it. So the accumulation of LDL, bad LDL, into arteries is based on one damaging taking place to those arteries. And we don't hear a whole lot of discussions about things like homocysteine, for example. Homocysteine is an amino acid your body makes. It makes too much of it. It can damage your arteries. There's no drug that treats homocysteine. You never hear about homocysteine in medicine, really. Very often you don't. And B6 and B12 and folate can treat high levels of homocysteine because of the pathway that creates homocysteine. And if it's lacking B12 and B6 and B12, give the body that, support it nutritionally, and change that pathway in a sense. And not just LDL in the arteries, but also there's infections that can cause damage to the arteries. And there's a lot of talk going on over several years about different types of even STDs or sexually transmitted diseases, such as chlamydia, that can increase your risk of cardiovascular disease because chlamydia itself is a bacterium that can damage and nick holes in the arteries in our body and lead to LDLs getting into that membrane and becoming oxidized. Foam cells get involved, and then immune system wise gets involved in it with a hard calcified plaque inside the arterial wall. So cholesterol, high cholesterol, everybody out there, is a symptom. It's not a cause of the disease. It's a symptom of the disease process. Maybe that person is pre-diabetic. Maybe they are diabetic, right? They have metabolic syndrome going on. Maybe that person has hypothyroidism or low thyroid function. That's not being treated because thyroid hormone affects the breakdown of cholesterol in the body and should be ruled out in anybody who has high cholesterol or high triglycerides. Maybe that patient is low in magnesium because magnesium affects how lipids are metabolized in the body. They can check with the blood test as well. So there are many reasons why your cholesterol can be high. Those need to be ferreted out rather than just treating the high cholesterol. That's just a symptom. That's not what is the cause of why it's high. Something's making that happen, or many things are making cholesterol be high in the body. So a very, very good reminder of cholesterol and not all cholesterol is bad. And again, a reminder too is to learn more about your cholesterol levels. If you've just had a lipid panel done, for example, that looks at total cholesterol, triglycerides, LDL, and HDL, there's more than just that picture. A lot more than that. And there's good LDL, and there's actually bad HDL. And a expanded lipid profile test can tell you that information. It's available out there. It's a common test. It's not that expensive to have done. And it tells you a lot of information about really how bad are your cholesterol levels in your body. That's a much better way of figuring out what to do with the patient other than putting them on some drug to lower the cholesterol. Okay, well, let's move forward there. So it's a short piece there on the cholesterol. You know, I'm always trying to encourage people and patients to exercise. And whenever I find an article that would suggest that doing that is a good idea, I like talking about it. So a new report that published in the Journal of Neurology last month followed more than 600 people starting at the age 70. And they gave very detailed events of their physical, mental, and social activities. And 3 years later, using imaging scans, the scientists found out that those who were engaged in the most physical exercise, which could include walking several times a week, had less shrinkage in their brain and damage to the brain's white matter. And this remained the same even when research is controlled for age, health status, social class, and IQ. And they even say here, as far as mental exercise is concerned, they say in their study here, we can only say we found no benefit in our sample. Now, that's not to suggest you shouldn't be doing mental exercises as you get older, but they're saying they found no benefit in this particular study. And those activities, though, that include mental exercise, have a lot of important associations with the quality of life that we have or the well-being that we're looking for. And the researchers definitely agreed that it's important for older adults to continue to pursue those things that challenge the brain. It's a good thing to do, and I still think it's a great thing to do. I mean, I think a lot of times that what happens, unfortunately, people have dementia or Alzheimer's sometimes, is that maybe there's a time period where there's lack of motivation, there's lack of exposure to doing a variety of things they used to do, or using their brain at a higher level that almost in a sense exercises the brain, right? And I think that, once again, exercise is a big piece. And what does exercise mean? Well, that means at least some event that lasts at least 20 minutes, 3 or 4 times a week, and you sweat at it. Okay, you sweat, actual real exercise. 3 or 4 times a week, what you want to be doing to really get the full benefit of doing that. And again, we also know it treats depression. Now we're saying it might help out with dementia. It's good for your immune system. Helps out cancer patients in all aspects of wherever they're at. If they're in remission or if they're fighting cancer, they should be exercising if they can, because it seems to make a huge effect on their overall outcome and mortality. So it's important to consider that exercise as a thing to have in your life and in your health. Little package that you're doing for yourself is to have the exercise piece with it, as well as a good diet. Those two trump anything. That every time this whole show is exercise and a good diet will help most people stay very, very healthy. All right, we've got burning questions. We're about to run out of time here today. We've got about 7 minutes to go. About 4 minutes to go in the show, probably looks like. And we'll go over a few little pieces here at the end. 522-1020. If you want a quick question, we got time for that. While we wait here, we will go on with talking about our last little piece. I won't get to cover all of this, but I want to mention a few things for good digestion. First of all, good digestion includes chewing your food. Okay? Chewing your food. You take a big bite of food, 20 or 30 chews, then swallow. Digestion begins in the mouth. Mastication, the act of chewing, actually is a process needed to maintain proper digestion. Amylase is secreted in your mouth. It breaks down starches, it lubricates your food. Things begin at the very beginning with digestion in your body, and it starts right in your mouth. So chewing your food well would be a good idea. Don't recommend drinking a lot of liquids at your dinners of any kind, because it dilutes your stomach acid where your food's at and will impede digestion. So a few sips of water throughout dinner are fine, but not pounding back loads of liquid while you're trying to eat food. Not a good idea. What are some of those simple things to be considering? Well, one is not just for the sake of having chewing your food directly, as what's obviously extremely important, but eating certain foods that are good for your GI tract. For example, I'm a big fan of getting people to consume some fermented foods like sauerkraut or water or dairy kefir, kombucha tea, pickled vegetables, yogurt, and even miso soup, which is a fermented type of soy. And many of these contain lots of healthy bacterial groups that can help seed inside your gastrointestinal tract and promote a healthy GI tract. Now, beyond fermented foods, we could also recommend people actually consuming probiotics, which is taking probiotics, which are healthy bacteria grown in the lab from human strains most of the time, and put in high levels into probiotic capsules or packages or powders. And it's important when you take probiotics to take them with food, because if you don't, a lot of your stomach acid is going to kill off a fair amount of the bacteria found in that product if your stomach's empty. You'll get some in, but not as much as you would if you take it with food, because food will raise the pH in your stomach a few points, say 1 or 2 at least, and change how many probiotics actually get killed. So, quite helpful. Fermented foods, probiotics, chewing your food, important things here. Oh my God, let's hear it. Glutamine, another good recommendation here. So glutamine is an extremely important nutrient for repair in the gastrointestinal tract. Glutamine is high in cabbage, so always a big fan. Recommend people steam cabbage or make coleslaw of your own homemade coleslaw. A great way of getting cabbage in, which is again very, very high in glutamine. One other big area which we can require an entire show talking about is the avoidance of genetically modified organisms or GMOs. And GMOs basically are types of things like soy and wheat and corn, where they've been modified in the lab to typically break down a pesticide that's sprayed on them and get rid of it. Well, they're messing with literally the DNA of vegetables. And there are a lot of people out there, including myself, who are beginning to believe that part of our problem with the increase in food allergies is our exposure to GMOs. Again, genetically modified organisms, okay, GMO. And I've seen a huge uptick in the amount of patients I see with allergies, even in my short time being back in Alaska for the last 8 years. There's more now than there was back when I first got here, at least what I'm seeing as far as patients. And there's something to it. And the problem is getting these things labeled. I mean, we live in a country, unfortunately, where we don't want to promote the use of GMOs because it might hurt some corporations' feelings. It's even a big debate going on in Europe. Should you label products that have GMOs? And they should, as should we. Well, and there's our sign, folks, that wrap things up. I recommend you, if you get a chance, to check out our website at drellenburg.com. That's drellenburg with u.com. Check us out. And we can find me at the Ellenburg Center for Natural Medicine. The phone number there is 563-2366. And I'm here Mondays from 2 to 3 p.m. right here on 1020 AM, 95.5 FM. Have a great week, and goodbye.
All new directions must go everywhere. Big round people in a cool little square. Or you can't cut it with a boat or a plane. Man, it's gonna take a new train. You'll be leaving on a new